Have you ever looked around your home, maybe a little too quiet these days, and thought to yourself, is this how it's supposed to be? Maybe your children are grown, with families and busy lives of their own. You did everything for them, sacrificed sleep, comfort, even your own dreams at times, because that's what a loving parent does. And yet now, as the years settle in and you face more mornings alone, you may find yourself wondering, who's here for me? You're not the only one. So many strong, caring, selfless people, especially women, reach a certain age and start to quietly realize that the life they built around others doesn't always circle back in the way they expected. Maybe your children live far away. Maybe they mean well, but are overwhelmed with their own responsibilities. Or maybe you simply don't want to feel like a burden, even though your heart aches for connection and support. It's a hard truth, but it's also a freeing one. Our children were never meant to carry the full weight of our well-being. They have their paths. And you, my friend, still have yours. This isn't a story about regret. This is a story about reclaiming your power. Today, we're going to talk about 8 pillars, 8 solid, empowering foundations that can support you in this chapter of life. Not out of desperation, but out of strength. Because the truth is, you deserve to age with dignity, with confidence, and yes, with freedom. Let's start with something that many people are afraid to talk about: money. Not because it's everything, but because it touches almost everything. If you're like many women of your generation, you may have spent years raising kids, running a household, working part-time or full-time, and making sure everyone else had what they needed. But when it comes to your own financial security, you might feel a little unsure. Maybe you didn't have the chance to save as much as you'd hoped. Maybe you don't know exactly what's coming in and what's going out each month. Or maybe you've always just trusted that if things got tough, your kids would help. But here's the quiet burden that comes with that hope. Relying too heavily on your children financially, whether spoken or unspoken, can create a strain neither of you intended. It can lead to guilt, resentment, or distance. And no one wants that. Now let me be clear, this isn't about blame. It's about building your own peace of mind. Your savings, your pension, your social security, whatever you've worked for, these are not just numbers. They are your voice. They give you options. They give you independence. And even if the numbers don't feel big, what matters most is how you use them. Take Helen, for example. She's 79 and lives in a modest one-bedroom apartment. Her income comes from Social Security and a small pension. She doesn't have a car, she takes the bus. She doesn't buy much, but she knows where every dollar goes. And you know what? She sleeps well at night. Not because she has a fortune, but because she has a plan. She doesn't have to ask her daughter to cover her rent. She doesn't feel like she's waiting for anyone else to swoop in and fix things. That, my friend, is freedom. It's not about having more. It's about managing well what you already have. And that starts with asking honest questions. What are your monthly expenses? What can be trimmed or simplified? Are there benefits or programs you're eligible for but haven't tapped into? You'd be amazed how much relief can come from just sitting down, writing things out, and taking one small step toward clarity. And if it feels overwhelming, ask for help, not from your children, but from a professional. A financial counselor at a senior center, a trusted friend, a local agency on aging. There is no shame in wanting to understand your own money better. In fact, it's one of the most powerful things you can do to stay in control of your life. Now let's talk about something that too often goes unclaimed: the benefits you've already earned. You've worked hard. You've paid taxes. You've contributed to society in more ways than one. And now, there are national and local programs created specifically to support people just like you, but only if you use them. We're talking about Medicare plans that include home care, preventive screenings, and wellness services. We're talking about housing assistance for older adults, transportation programs, food delivery services, utility support, and more. But the truth is, many people don't use them. Why? Pride, confusion, not knowing where to begin. Maybe someone told you once that asking for help is a weakness. But let me offer you something else. Maybe it's actually wisdom. Margaret, 76, used to live in an old rental house with peeling paint, a broken heater, and a leaky roof. Her son wanted to help, but he lived 3 states away. So Margaret started asking questions. She called the local senior services office. Within a few months, she was living in a quiet, clean senior apartment with on-site support. Her rent? Cut in half? And the weight on her shoulders? Lifted. There is power in reaching out. There is grace in accepting what is already yours. These programs exist not to make you feel needy, but to remind you that you are seen, valued, and supported by your community. Maybe your knees don't like the stairs anymore. Maybe driving feels less safe than it used to. Maybe cooking every night is just too much. There are services for all of that. Meals on Wheels, shuttle buses to doctor appointments, volunteers who can help with grocery runs or even repairs around the house. These aren't luxuries. They're lifelines. And they're there because someone, years ago, believed that you deserve to live with dignity and care. Still unsure? Reach out to your local library, health department, or church. Ask if there's an agency on aging in your area. These organizations exist to guide you, step by step, through the paperwork, the forms, the options. You are not alone in this. And when you tap into these resources, financial and practical, you're not just lightening your own load. You're freeing your children too. You're giving them the beautiful gift of being able to love you without worrying about whether you're okay. You allow your relationship to shift from stress to joy, from pressure to presence. And that, my dear friend, is what aging with grace truly means. Let's keep going. Because once you've strengthened your financial foundation and connected with the resources meant to support you, it's time to think about where you live and whether that place is truly helping you live fully. Because here's the thing, your home isn't just 4 walls and a roof. It's your sanctuary, your rhythm, your foundation for every day you wake up and say, "This life is still mine." But as we get older, what once felt like comfort can slowly become clutter. That 2-story house with the creaky stairs might hold memories, but it might also hold risks. The long driveway, the steep steps, the rooms you no longer use, they can quietly wear you down or keep you trapped in a space that no longer serves your needs. That's why one of the kindest, wisest things you can do for yourself and for your family is to live somewhere that supports the version of you right now, not the one from 20 years ago. Diane, 78, knows what that feels like. After her husband passed, she stayed in their old house for almost 2 years. Every room echoed with memories, but also with loneliness. She was tired of fixing things. The yard needed care, the plumbing never quite worked, and the nights felt heavy. Her daughter gently suggested she look into senior-friendly housing. At first, Diane resisted. She didn't want to be around old people, she said. But eventually, curiosity won. She visited a community for independent seniors, clean, cozy, with walking paths and friendly faces. And something shifted. A few months later, Diane had neighbors who checked in on her, a smaller space she could manage easily, and a common room where someone always offered her a cup of tea. "I'm not around old people," she said one day, laughing. "I'm around my people." That's the gift of a senior-friendly community. It isn't about giving up your independence, it's about protecting it. These spaces are designed for you: wide doorways, walk-in showers, emergency buttons, ground floor access. No more worrying about slippery tubs or reaching high shelves. No more loneliness in a neighborhood that's gone quiet. Instead, you're surrounded by people who get it, who move at your pace, who share your memories of songs, shows, and simpler times. And perhaps the most beautiful part? You no longer need your kids to call every day just to make sure you're okay. There's a quiet strength in knowing you're not alone, and not because someone feels obligated to check in, but because they want to. But what if moving isn't in the cards right now? That's okay. The bigger message here is this: your environment should work for you, not against you. Whether it's downsizing, simplifying, or even modifying your current space, you deserve a home that gives you energy instead of draining it. And you don't have to wait for a crisis to make that change. In fact, the best time to prepare for the future is when you're still able to choose, freely, calmly, wisely. And while we're talking about the people around you, let's take a moment to recognize one of the most underrated treasures in later life: true friendship. Not everyone has children who live nearby. Not everyone has a big extended family. But all of us, regardless of age, need connection. Not the kind that fills a room, but the kind that fills your heart. Some of the most beautiful support systems come from the friends who are still here. The ones who remember how you like your coffee. The ones who ask, "How's your back?" and actually wait for an answer. The ones who show up, not because they're expected to, but because they simply care. Betty is 80, and she's been living alone in the same neighborhood for over 30 years. Her 3 children are spread across the country, and visits are rare. But her 2 longtime friends, Pat and Lorraine, live just a few blocks away. When Betty had surgery on her hip, they didn't wait to be asked. They brought over groceries, sat with her during recovery, and called every morning to check on her. They never made me feel like I was asking too much, Betty said. They just did what needed to be done. That's friendship. And it's often these friendships, quiet, steady, loyal, that end up being stronger than some family ties. They come with less guilt, less baggage, and a whole lot of understanding. These women have laughed together, cried together, grieved and celebrated together. They don't need to explain why certain holidays feel hard or why old songs make them tear up. They just know. But here's something important. Friendships like that don't always fall into your lap. Sometimes you have to build them. That means saying yes when someone invites you to lunch, even if you're tired. It means showing up to a morning walking group, even if you don't know anyone yet. It means picking up the phone first, not waiting for someone else to call. It doesn't take a crowd, just 1 or 2 people you can rely on. People who'll sit with you in silence or laugh with you over something silly. People who remind you that you are not walking through this stage of life alone. And something beautiful happens when your children know you have these kinds of connections. They feel lighter. They feel relieved. They're happy to know you're not isolated, not emotionally dependent on them for everything. They want to see you thriving, not waiting. And while friends are priceless, sometimes what we really need is help from someone trained to do exactly that. This brings us to something that often goes unspoken. Getting professional support is not weakness. It's wisdom. Whether it's a doctor, a financial advisor, a therapist, or a caregiver, these people exist for one reason: to help you navigate this chapter with clarity and care. Think about Susan, 73, a retired bank teller. She had always handled the bills, paid off her mortgage, and done okay managing her money. But as healthcare costs started rising and her prescription list got longer, she realized she needed a clearer plan. She made an appointment with a financial planner at the local senior center. Together, they reviewed her income, adjusted her budget, and prepared for future expenses like long-term care or in-home help. It wasn't just about the money, she said later. It was about feeling in control again. And this goes beyond finances. Think about your health. Having a good primary care doctor or a geriatric specialist can make all the difference. These are not people you see only when something is wrong. They're partners in your well-being, people who know what's normal what to watch for, and how to help you stay strong. And if you've been carrying around grief or regret or silent stress for years, talking to a therapist doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're brave. It means you're ready to release what no longer serves you and make space for more peace. Even hiring a part-time caregiver, someone to help with meals, errands, or medication, can feel like lifting a 100-pound weight off your shoulders. These professionals are trained to help without judgment, without family drama, without that nagging feeling of being a burden. They preserve your dignity while supporting your daily life. Yes, some services cost money, but not getting help can cost even more. Your energy, your health, your relationships. Prevention is almost always more affordable and more empowering than crisis. And here's the best part. When you rely on professionals for what they do best, your children get to stay in their role. They don't have to become your accountant, your nurse, your emotional therapist. They get to be your son, your daughter, your family. And you remain in the driver's seat of your own life. Let's keep walking together, because there's more to this journey. And just ahead, there's a kind of support that might surprise you. One that doesn't come from an office or a paycheck, but from the heart of your community. Because sometimes the most unexpected lifelines aren't formal services or structured programs. They're people gathered in a circle, wearing name tags or aprons, smiling across a folding table over coffee and donuts. You see, in this season of life, support doesn't always look like a nurse or a check in the mail. Sometimes it looks like shared laughter, showing up for someone else, or being reminded that you still matter. Local volunteer circles and support groups for seniors have quietly become one of the strongest sources of connection and strength for people just like you. Not because they solve every problem, but because they bring back something so many people lose after retirement, a sense of purpose. Joanne, 75, knows this firsthand. After her husband passed, she spent a long stretch of time just existing. Mornings bled into afternoons. The house was quiet. She didn't want to burden her kids with her sadness, so she smiled through the phone calls and waved from the porch. But inside, she felt invisible. Then one day at the library, she saw a flyer for a senior volunteer team helping to build wheelchair ramps for other older adults in the area. She figured, why not? And signed up to hand out water and sandwiches to the crew. What she didn't expect was that showing up that day would lead her into a community that would anchor her. "It gave me a reason to get dressed in the morning again," she said. "Not because someone needed me, but because I was needed." That's the magic. When you participate in a space where others share your stage of life, everything starts to feel lighter. These aren't charity groups. They are circles of strength. Everyone gives. Everyone receives. And whether you're packing boxes for a local pantry, knitting blankets for newborns, walking with a group on Tuesday mornings, or simply sitting and listening during a grief support meeting, you are part of something living, something healing. And that healing comes not just from what you do, but from who you do it with. You start seeing familiar faces. People greet you by name. They notice when you're not there. They ask about your knee or your granddaughter or your garden. These little gestures stitch you back into the fabric of community, one that doesn't rely on shared bloodlines, but on shared humanity. And even if you're not the social type, even if you don't want to chat or share, you can still belong. Just being present can be enough. You don't have to be the loudest in the room. You don't have to have all the answers. Your presence alone can speak volumes. And while you're giving your time, something beautiful happens. Your identity returns. You're no longer just mom or grandma or the lady who lives alone. You become a mentor, a partner, a friend, a valuable part of someone else's routine. And in return, the quiet parts of you, the parts that maybe haven't been seen in a while, begin to shine again. But support doesn't always come in the form of a group. Sometimes it comes from somewhere even deeper, even more personal, your spirit. As we get older, the questions change. We start to wonder not just, how do I stay safe, but why am I still here? What does this phase of life want to teach me? What happens to all the emotions I've carried for decades? These are not questions your children can answer for you. And truthfully, they're not supposed to. That's where spiritual or faith-based communities come in, not to give you all the answers, but to help you carry the questions with peace. Grace, 74, spent most of her adult life away from organized religion. She'd gone to church as a child but drifted from it as work and motherhood took over. Then, years after retiring, she found herself sitting in her kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at a photo of her late husband and wondering what she was supposed to do with the ache that hadn't gone away. She walked back into her childhood church one Sunday, not because she had regained her old beliefs, but because she missed feeling connected to something bigger than her to-do list. "I didn't go for sermons," she said. "I went for stillness." Faith communities, whether in the form of a church, a temple, a mosque, a sangha, or a circle of people meditating in someone's backyard, can provide structure, rhythm, and meaning. And weekly gatherings, seasonal events, shared prayers or reflections, all of these gently mark the passing of time, offering comfort and orientation in days that might otherwise feel shapeless. And beyond the rituals, these communities offer companionship. Someone notices when you haven't shown up. Someone asks how your week went. Someone says your name out loud in a room full of caring hearts. Even if you're not religious, the space to reflect, to sit in silence, to honor your own journey, these things matter deeply. Because aging isn't just physical, it's spiritual, it's emotional, and your soul deserves attention too. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to believe exactly what you did years ago. Faith evolves. It grows with you. And spiritual community isn't about doctrine, it's about belonging. And in those moments, lighting a candle, hearing a familiar hymn, holding someone's hand in prayer, you remember something essential. You are still part of something sacred. Not just because you've lived many years, but because you are still living. And that, in itself, is holy. Finally, let's return to the most overlooked source of strength: you. Your own skills, your own routines, your own habits and rhythms that have quietly held you together through decades of change. Carol is 81, and she'll tell you the most valuable thing she brought with her when she moved into her smaller apartment wasn't the antique china or the family photo albums. It was her notebook. Every morning, she opens it and writes her checklist. Take meds, stretch, make tea, water the plant on the windowsill, call Janice, do one crossword puzzle. Those little wins, she said, they remind me I'm still in charge. And she's right. Your routines, the ones you've been practicing for years, are anchors. Making your bed, wiping down the counter, doing a few light stretches, reading your devotionals. They might not seem like much, but they are powerful statements. I'm still here. I still choose how I live this day. The same goes for your skills. You may not climb ladders or lift heavy boxes anymore, but you still know how to cook a good meal. You still know how to organize, how to problem solve, how to adapt when things go sideways. That wisdom, born of years, of mistakes, of perseverance, is more valuable than you think. And when you rely on those skills, when you trust your own rhythms, something shifts. You stop waiting. You stop doubting. You start remembering that you are more capable than anyone may have told you recently, including yourself. Even simple routines like brushing your hair, choosing your clothes with care, sitting with your coffee in silence, these are acts of dignity. They tell your mind and body, this life is still worth showing up for. And let's not forget, when your children know you've got systems in place, When they see you thriving in your space with habits that keep you grounded, they worry less. You ease their minds not by being perfect, but by being steady. You allow them to love you without anxiety, and that is a gift. So let's be clear, this isn't about doing everything alone. It's about doing what you can with the tools you already have. And when you need help, asking for it, not from a place of panic, but from a place of preparation. Because you've already done the groundwork. You've already lived 100 lives inside one. You already know how to endure, to adapt, to rise. And now, as the world slows down around you, you get to choose how to move forward. Not by leaning heavily on your children, but by standing strong on the pillars you've quietly built all along. You, my friend, are not a burden. You are a woman who has weathered more storms than most people ever see. And your strength? It's not gone. It's just taking on a new shape. There's something deeply powerful about recognizing just how much you've already built in your life. All the years of showing up, figuring things out, making do, and loving fiercely, you didn't just raise a family or work a job. You built resilience. You built habits. You built wisdom that doesn't disappear with age. It becomes more valuable. And that's what this journey is really about. It's not about rejecting your children or pushing them away. It's about protecting the love between you by not turning it into a lifeline. It's about giving yourself the gift of steadiness so that your relationships stay rooted in joy, not responsibility. We've walked through these 8 pillars together, and what they all have in common is this: they help you stay grounded in your own strength. Your savings and pension remind you that you've earned the right to rest without guilt. Government programs exist not to label you, but to lift you. A home that fits your needs isn't a downgrade. It's a declaration that your well-being matters. Friendships, professional support, volunteer circles, faith communities, and your own daily routines. Each one gives you another thread to weave a strong, steady net that holds you up when life gets wobbly. So, where do you begin? Maybe you already have a few of these pillars in place. That's beautiful. Honor them. Water them. Give them attention. And maybe a few are missing, or still in the someday category. That's okay too. There's no rush. No finish line. You can start small, right where you are. Maybe you make one phone call tomorrow to a local senior center, a friend you've lost touch with, or your doctor's office to schedule a checkup. Maybe you walk through your home and ask yourself, what here still serves me and what's just taking up space? Maybe you open your notebook and write 3 things you can do this week to feel more grounded. Simple things, like organizing your medications, calling about a community class, or just sitting outside with your morning coffee instead of the TV. Each step counts. Each choice you make for your own peace, your own strength, your own joy, it adds up. And here's something important. Independence doesn't mean isolation. Living independently doesn't mean you never ask for help, never need others, or never lean. It means you have options. It means when you reach out, it's from a place of choice, not desperation. It means your children can love you freely, without worrying if you're secretly drowning. That's one of the most loving things you can do for them, you know. To show them that you are still standing, not because everything is easy, but because you've built a life that supports you from every side. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You've already lived enough chapters to know what matters. Now is the time to live with intention, with grace, with a quiet but unshakable confidence that says, I've got this. Even if your hands don't move as quickly as they used to, your heart is still strong. Even if your calendar looks different than it did 10 years ago, your presence still holds weight. Even if your name isn't called as often as it once was, your story still echoes with value. You are not done giving. You are not done growing. And you are not, ever, a burden. The people who love you want to see you thrive. They want to laugh with you, celebrate with you, learn from you, not feel the pressure of being your only support. And when you invest in these pillars, when you say yes to your own stability, you're giving them that gift. You're also giving yourself something even more precious: freedom. Freedom to wake up each morning and know that your day belongs to you. Freedom to enjoy your family without fear that they're slipping away because they feel too needed. Freedom to look around your life and say, "This is mine, I built this." And when the hard days come, and they will, you'll be ready. Not because you won't feel sadness or fear, but because you'll know where to turn. You'll have people, systems, habits, and communities that carry you. And that's what security truly means. There's a quiet joy in reclaiming your strength at this stage of life. It's not flashy. It doesn't come with applause. But it settles into your bones like warm sunlight, gentle, steady, nourishing. So if this video has stirred something in you, if you've nodded along or felt a lump rise in your throat, take that as a sign that it's your time. Not to start over, but to step into this season with purpose. You have more options than you think. You have more power than you've been told. And you are surrounded by more potential than you may have realized. Your next chapter isn't about fading. It's about deepening. It's about stepping out of survival mode and into something more rooted, more joyful, more free. And you don't have to do it alone. Not now, not ever. If this message spoke to you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What part resonated with you most? What pillar do you already have in your life? And what are you ready to build next? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And your journey continues to inspire more people than you know. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to click the like button. It helps others find this message too. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. This is a space for you, for your heart, your wisdom, and your peace. Here's to living fully, freely, and fearlessly at any age. You are not behind. You are right on time. And you are deeply, profoundly worthy of the life you choose.